Moses is in the Haggadah. And here, we looked at this before. We were slaves to Pharaoh in Egypt, Avadim Hayinu. By the way, here's the ayin. And in the Madish Tanah, the 4 questions, you should ask the kids, where's the large man? And where's the hay, if the kids know Hebrew? It's tricky, where that's initialized letters. Here's Pharaoh. Moses and Aaron are here. But what's wrong with this image? There's something else that's wrong. You know, that's a good thing. Let's find all the things that are wrong with Sheikh Sagat. There's dedication page. But what's wrong here is that the biblical narrative tells us when Moses and Aaron come before Pharaoh, who puts out their rod that turns into a serpent before Pharaoh? It's not Moses. It's Aaron. And Ship changes it around. How do we know that this is Moses and not Aaron? Because here's Aaron here with the breastplate. Here's Moses putting this rod. He wants to elevate the status of Moses, so he does that. Ship knew who had the rod. So again, Moses. Or here, Moses again on the Exodus. This is in the Haggadah. This was done a year before, like that other piece with Moses right in the French. Only 2 of those are known. They're both in the exhibition. Both found in recent years. And in the 1920s, the Exodus from Egypt. No Moses, or maybe Moses is here. If he is, you've got to find him. Okay? I don't have time to take, but you can look at that. Moses, Israelites drowning at the sea, the Egyptians drowning. By the way, when there's a page of this, talking about the Egyptians drowning in the sea in the Haggadah, you'll notice it changes to red calligraphy. You should see how many works of art have red calligraphy. When people are dying, she changes the calligraphy to red. There's a big shin, Hebrew letter, that's like a ship, that looks like a boat. It's one of my favorite pieces too. Does anybody have their book? Let me show you that, because this is quite fun. I love this. Oh, look at this book. Annotated. This is great. I love that. Here, look at this. Big red calligraphy. They're drowning. And this shin is the first letter of this Hebrew word here. See, that's how Ship uses these big letters. And first Hebrew word, but it's just like a ship with these lions. I love this ship. I was actually going to use this on the cover. I tried, it was so complicated we didn't do that. But there you are, red calligraphy. And large, too.
And that's only on a page like this. When there's red calligraphy on other pages, it doesn't necessarily...
No, it's really small. But here, it's very large, very definitive. So here you are. And then the other figure is David. Did we look at David before? We saw him in Dayenu. Let's just blow him up a little bit. I won't lose you here on this one. Twice. Look what color is his hair. What color is his eye? Blue. The Aryan. Blonde hair and blue eyes. By the way, Shik knew also because when Naomi is in the Haggadah with Ruth, and Ruth converts to Judaism, she has blonde hair and blue eyes. It's not arbitrary, the hair color. She's a convert. That doesn't mean everybody with blonde hair, but Shik knows that. And he also did, by the way, at the same time he was working on the Haggadah, he also did playing cards. I made these. I bought the original art book. In the 1930s, when he was working on the Haggadah, this is not in the exhibition, this is in the gift shop, though. Anyway. He created, this is not a commercial advertising, I just want to teach you. He did 3 sheets of paper. They're horizontal. All the kings of ancient Israel, Saul, David, and Solomon, and Hezekiah are the kings. He painted hearts, diamonds, spades, and clubs on them. Then he did the queens. One queen, Esther, but the other women are heroic. Ruth, Deborah, and Judith. And he has the symbols of every one. Ruth is gleaning, Judith has the sword, Deborah has the scales of justice as a judge. He painted the hearts, diamonds, spades, and clubs on all of them. And he wrote in French, the king of hearts, king of diamonds, and the women heroes, and the jacks were the warriors. Remember, he's doing it at the same time as I got it. Bar Kokhba, Judah Maccabee, and 2 other generals. I found these 3 pages. So then I decided to make playing cards. So I made decks of cards with all the kings, queens, and jacks. They're fun. And then that wasn't enough for me, so I decided we had to write a book about it. It's the only book I know of where there's a book about art in a particular deck of playing cards. That's interesting. In playing card history, there's books about groups of playing cards. So we have a book about Jewish heroes. I brought it, see. Anyhow, this is also in the 30s. The chick's very caught up with it. So here's heroes. This is David. And David again at the end. And this is a sketch he did, which he thought would be there. That's in the exhibition also. And David, and look at this. And, you know, in the narrative, who's chasing the Israelites in chariots? The Egyptians, right? No, not for shit. The Jews are in the chariot. How do you know? Well, here's the Star of David. Here's the blue and white banner. And here's the fallen enemy of Israel. A soldier of the enemy who has fallen. The eagle of Rome or Nazi Germany is above the enemy of Israel, and the dove of peace is above the Jewish soldiers. Why am I back to this page? And the reason I'm back to this page, because I'm at the end, is because they're Zionism motifs. Sion, Zion. The land of Israel is important to Schick. It's not just about survival. The land of Israel is also important. Zion, the generation, blessing the new generation of secular Jews. We're going to go off to the Jewish Star of David here with the word Sion, Zion in the center. Or here you have, this is one of my 2 or 3 favorite pieces of the Haggadah. Go to town on this one if you can. Pick your own. By the way, here's my, did I tell you this before? Learn 2 pieces in this Haggadah, in this exhibition, that you are the expert. No one knows those 2. Don't, everything you know a little bit about, get a piece that you know. Because, by the way, when your group comes through and you explain that one piece, they're going, oh my God, this person, that you know everything. So learn something really well. Okay? People used to think, when I was a pulpit rabbi, people thought I was pretty smart, I knew a lot of stuff. But the truth of the matter is that when I came to teach a class, I only concentrated on something I knew so well, they thought I knew everything else. I didn't, I only knew that. But here, this is the bread of affliction. Ha lachma anya. This is the bread of affliction. What's the bread of affliction? Matzah. It is called the bread of affliction. And guess what? We Jews call it also the bread of freedom. We call it both. Affliction, and we call it the bread of freedom. Now, Schick knows that. How do we know he knows that? Because here we know. Meanwhile, and by the way, how do we know that? I'll tell you that in a second. Here's the large hay. There's the for the first word. Ha of halachmani. Who's here in the center? Abraham. Abraham's greeting the 3 strangers, angels, strangers, come to visit him. What's he serving them? When do they come? They come on the first day of Passover. What's Abraham going to serve them on the first day of Passover? Matzah. Can't serve them bread. How does that happen? The Exodus from ancient Egypt doesn't happen until later. Because in the Bible, we're able to do that with history. We do that all the time. We don't care about the chronology. We care about the message. He is serving matzah. Schick knows that. That's why this image is with, this is the bread of affliction page that our ancestors ate in Egypt, this matzah. Now to the bread of affliction and the bread of freedom. How does Schick deal with both of those ideas? Because look, bottom left, Jews are in chains here, afflicted. Who are they working for? They're working for the Egyptians. They're their bosses, but they're not their bosses, they're their taskmasters. Here's 2 Jews, they're working, they're carrying working equipment with them, but no chains. Why? Because they're free. They're going off to Palestine. How do I know they're going off to Palestine? Because what Schick has done is on this group of these 2 guys over here, he paints a tattoo on the arm of the Jew over here. You tattoos? Jews don't wear tattoos. We don't. This response to the concentration camps? No. He's painting this before they're putting tattoos on Jews in the concentration camps. So not a response to them. He wants this to be the new Jew, the macho Jew, the Jew who's going to be strong, build up the land, go off to Palestine. And then he paints a little Hebrew letter inside to start. It gets deeper and deeper and deeper. And that's a tzadi. That's the Hebrew letter for the word Sion, Zion. Love this image. And look, at the top is the warrior who's going to fight against oppression and affliction. And it's magnificent. And here you can go to town with this symbol down here. Was there a swastika? And this Egyptian symbol here, or this Nazi symbol. And the, oh man, woman. Okay. So, and Jews going off to Zion and sowing the land. Religious Jews working in the fields, sowing the land with the appropriate blessing of bringing forth the wheat, the bread from the earth. I mean, he had it. He had it there. Each one of these has been in Freedom of Living. Shalom Sabar talks about every one of these. And again, the blue and white banner, which I mentioned earlier. 4 sons, we can't spend a lot of time on. She illustrated them twice in the Haggadah. From questions. What are the difference between these? This is in the Haggadah, the wise son, what does he say and all that, the wicked one, how do you answer them? What's the difference between them? How did he make changes? Why did he make changes? How did he do that? Oh, after the war's over, there's 4 sons for him too. 4 types of American Jews and their attitude toward Israel. Sound like anything you ever heard of? The Jews have different attitudes towards Israel? Well, after the war they did. The wicked son said, in this pamphlet that came after the war, yeah, all right, let the Jews, all right, let them go back to their own democracies where they came from, the countries will take them in, that's what they'll do. That was the text of this in Schick's artwork. The uninformed sons, I don't know too much about the Jews having a homeland, or I don't really care, I don't wish to know, no big deal. The wise son says, I fought for freedom. America fought for freedom. As American Jews, I fought for freedom in a war for in 1776. We fought for freedom throughout the time Jews have participated. And coming out of Europe, the Jewish people should have an opportunity to be safe and secure in their own land. Different responses should use that motif after the war's over as well. There are 5 dedication pages in the Haggadah. Only 2 that Schick did. Only 2 appear. The King George, which we went over, and 2 other. And here's numbers 2 and 3 of the 5, which did not appear in the Haggadah. These are in the exhibition. Schick thought that these would be in the Haggadah. They didn't make it. What was he doing? This is a dedication they did in 1938. The thought should be in the Haggadah. To the Jews of Germany and to the Jews of Austria. After the Germans went into Austria in the Anschluss in 1938, and after Kristallnacht. And Schick said that I'm going to dedicate this to my brothers. I'm not giving the whole translation, but I can give it to you afterwards. I have it here. And here, after World War II breaks out, Schick thinks, okay, I should dedicate this to the Jews, my Haggadah to the Jews in Germany. And this is a dedication specifically to them. They didn't appear in the Haggadah. He went for the King George dedication page. He created another dedication page. This, by the way, the first King George was in English, Hebrew, Polish, Yiddish. And this one, he did his dedication page. This was to the Jews of Lemberg, Lviv, the same town. He thought, he says, I want to dedicate this to my ancestral homeland, Poland, but to the notables, particularly of Lemberg, who were my supporters. And this Haggadah should be called the Lemberger Haggadah. The Lemberg Haggadah, after the town. You have the Amsterdam Haggadah, you have the Venice Haggadah. This should be the Lemberger Haggadah, because they put up the money. This did not appear in Haggadah in the exhibition. And he did one more, the 5th dedication page, which did appear in the Haggadah. It is in French, an international language at the time. Schick knew this. One of my favorite pages. Schick says here, listen to this. I am but a Jew praying in art. If I have succeeded, and this text is translated in your books, if I have succeeded in any measure, if I have gained the attention of the elite of the world, something of that nature, I owe it all to the teachings, to the traditions, and the eternal virtues of my people. And he signs this in this little medallion here, which you can't see on my side. This is not printed. This is a handmade medallion on the original artwork. It's not printed. You'll see it on the original artwork. Image d'Israël. Painter of Israel. Painter of the Jewish people. How did he sign the King George dedication page in the beginning of the Haggadah? Arthur Schick, illuminator of Poland. At the end of the Haggadah, it's painter of Israel. And then, my last image. This is the image which is the last page in the Haggadah. This is the image that's the first page in the Haggadah. And do you know what the first Hebrew words are in Schick's Haggadah on the first page? In eshkachet Yerushalayim. If I forget thee, O Jerusalem, let my tongue cleave to the roof of my mouth. And do you know on the last page of the Haggadah what the last Hebrew words are? In eshkachet Yerushalayim. If I forget thee, O Jerusalem. Okay, thank you very much. So we have time for questions. Questions.
I have a concept question
Concept
about
question.
the exhibit.
Yeah.
What was the process for deciding to do only the pieces from the Haggadah and not to include stuff from Justice Illuminated or the other political works?
The genesis of this exhibition was many years ago, and the focus of it was to be the Haggadah. The museum made the decision that they wanted to focus only on the Haggadah. I cannot. I had numerous meetings to advocate for the inclusion of other Haggadah-related works, and happily the museum saw the wisdom, the value of that. You want to show these other dedication pages because they help tell the story. You want to see how Schick was dealing with themes in various other ways. You want to show Hitler as Pharaoh. You want to. So happily then it focused on that. But the political works are not part of it. I imagine another time, another place. But for now, that's. Question.
Regarding the 1940, that original printing, those 250 copies that come out, I'm interested to know if you managed to track where they've ended up.
Yeah, the answer is I don't know. I know where a lot of them are. I would say that almost all of them are probably still in existence. I kept kicking myself saying, oh, for 10, I should have started 10 years ago writing down who had every number and where they were. But I know many private collectors and institutions that have them. So I know where a lot of them are. I've handled a number of them too. Yeah.
Would you say that the majority of owners are Jewish?
I would say that likely. I have the original subscribers list that the Beaconsfield Press had, so I know that all the names of the early subscribers, and almost all of them are Jewish. Yeah, but there are a lot in lots of university libraries in America. Yes.
One of the things that I think is really fascinating about him is there's this whole side where he could have gone into primarily socialist-looking art, like from the 1930s, only in that direction. And here he is drawing from Illumination, being... Do we have any hints as to why he was drawn in that direction?
To Illumination.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I don't know if I changed your question a little bit. But when you illuminate something, you're dealing with, you can more clearly deliver a message as an illuminator rather than some other styles that may not clearly live. If you're just doing Slavic folk art and design, and by the way, Schick does so much ornamental stuff. You almost wonder, why does he spend so much time on, ornaments and borders and decorative designs? Well, this man knew everything about Polish and Slavic folk art. And he knew everything about Polish nationalist paintings, and he knew everything about the George Grosses and about the artwork of the 30s, and he knew everything about, he understood Renaissance painting. If you see that drawing I showed you of Moses with the two figures on his side, you look at that pencil drawing and you saw the shading. You're going to see how these figures recede here and these come forward because he knew all the techniques. So he assimilated, one of the questions somebody might ask me is, how come not everybody knows who he is? I mean, before this exhibition, may I ask, before you were first heard named Archduke Schick in regards to, how many people here heard of Arthur Schick? Okay, well, this is a pretty large number. That's several percent. Most people don't know who he is, never heard of him. How is it possible that a man who illustrates the front cover of Time magazine after the bombing of Pearl Harbor and has his artwork there, how is it possible that Franklin Roosevelt, I don't know if you ever heard of the Four Freedoms speech, but freedom from fear, freedom from want. When Roosevelt gave that speech, did you know that 38 paintings of Arthur Schick were hanging in the White House dealing with freedom? Eleanor Roosevelt wrote about him regularly in her columns. Every soldier who went overseas to fight in World War II, who went through what's called a USO base, it's where they went for training, a center. Schick's artwork was exhibited in 500 USO bases. Rockwell, born in the same year Arthur Schick illustrates the covers of the Saturday Evening Post. Everybody knows Rockwell, right? How many copies of each issue of the Saturday Evening Post came out in the 1940s? I'll tell you how many. 3 million. Schick was illustrating the covers of Collier same time. How many copies of this came out? 2.5 million. Everybody who saw Rockwell saw Arthur Schick. And the most famous illustrated children's book is Anderson's by Schick. And he was so well decorated, and people forgot to read him. Why? Why did that happen? I don't know why. I can give you some ideas. I don't know why. And his name's hard to pronounce, but that's not it in alone. SZYK. People don't know. You Schick. You tell them Schick like the razor. People know the Schick razor. That's how you pronounce the name. Schick was not part of any school of art. There's no school of Schick. No one followed him. If you see his style, you're not going to confuse him with anyone else because he was unique. Art historians haven't known what to do with Schick. How do you get your handle on him? Where do you put him? How do you do that? Is that an excuse for not writing about him? I don't know. But people who've written great books about Jewish art, or famous Jewish artists, he's not there. People who've experts on World War II, they've written about all the World War II, he's not there. How's that possible? How does that happen? Now, before 1997, there's no books about him. The internet's in its infancy. You can't read about it, can't see about it. He died at age 57. Nobody kept him alive. The family, when Schick died, dismissed all the dealers working with his artwork because they were going to promote Schick. Then Schick's son dies, and there's no dealers, no family. The wife sells off all of his paintings in 4 auction sales, and that's gone. You have no... And you have a man who's working in medieval manuscript illumination that's already anachronistic by 400 years. Who cares? About illuminated manuscripts in 1951, when you have abstract modernism and everything else taking hold, who's interested in realism of World War II. And no Jewish groups are keeping him alive either. Why? Because he wasn't part of the Ben-Gurion, Haganah, the formation of the Israeli state. He's part of the Jabotinsky people, the Menachem Begin people. So Israel's got nothing for him. And in America, the American Jewish community is not keeping him alive because he criticized the American Jewish community during the war because he thought Stephen Wise and all the people involved in all those organizations weren't doing enough to rescue European Jewry. And so he created this artwork, he created everything. So the American Jewry didn't keep him alive, Israeli Jewry didn't keep him alive. The art world didn't keep him alive, no one pronounced his name. No dealers were out there. I don't know why. But it's happening again. He's back, and you know why? It's of you. Because you're going to be telling people about Schick. You and the docents who were here yesterday, and you'll pick something of Schick. Learn something so well. And I see the world, when I was a rabbi, I used to see the world as everything as a sermon. And my wife was a kid, you go out, I see an incident, that became a sermon. It turns out that over the past, 20 years, I happen to see a lot of things through Arthur Schick. That's how I learned about political art. That's how I learned about American history. That's how I've learned about Polish nationalist paintings and Matejko and how great he was. That's how I knew a little bit more about Rockwell. Because Schick drove me in those directions. And, look, I found scholars to write papers. The head of art at the Library of Congress, wrote this paper, Democracy's Weapon, Arthur Schick in America. And a Jewish guy, who's a professor, who's not really very Jewish, but who's at UCLA, Paul von Blum, who had crosses on his front lawn when he was a kid because his parents believed in segregation in the neighborhood, wrote this paper about the civil rights art of Arthur Schick. And all the artwork that he was doing for the civil rights movement 20 years before the civil rights movement. You know what Schick said in 1942 in a newspaper article? Somebody interviewed him and said, if you didn't have to worry about rescuing European Jews or working on behalf of the Allies, what would you be doing? And Schick said, you know what I would do? I would devote my life to the freedom of the black man in America. Can you imagine that? A Polish Jewish immigrant in 1942, in the midst of that, said that? I mean, that's Arthur Schick. And here, there's another paper. And you can get these now. Here, these are heraldic art. I found a heraldic artist who said, oh my God, there's so much heraldry in Arthur Schick's art. So he writes about him as the greatest non-heraldic artist of the 20th century. The greatest heraldic artist who's not a heraldic artist of the 20th century. So there you have it. And then a Jesuit woman, loved Arthur Schick's piece of De Profundis, Out of the Depths, based on Psalm 130, I think. Out of the depths I called upon you. Check this out. Jews, lifeless and dying Jews are here. This artwork was reproduced on the cover in the 1943 in the Chicago Sun. They didn't know about the Holocaust? 1943, this is full page, this is huge in the Chicago Sun. And who does he paint up here? Who's with the Jews? Who's that? Jesus. He paints Jesus holding the Ten Commandments, dying with the Jews. And how is this artwork used? This artwork appears in the Chicago Sun. And guess who paid for this artwork in there? Christian Protestant group paid for it. And why did they pay for it? And down the bottom, and by the way, here's what the newspaper looks like. So that's what I try to publish these papers. Like people like, here's what it looks like in the newspaper. See, there's text down the bottom. Christian Textbook Commission published this. Why? Because they're saying because of the centuries of anti-Semitism that we have taught, and because of what we have put in our Christian textbooks, this is what can happen. And not only is it anti-Semitic, and not only is it anti-American, but it's anti-Christian itself. And that's how Schick's artwork was used during the war years. So, in the answer to the question, why wasn't the political art used? See, my response would be, this helps to contextualize a lot of, that this man's themes were running through. When a man does this picture of a black man who's got the Purple Heart from World War II, enrobed, with the Ku Klux Klan behind him, and Schick's caption is, "Father, do not forgive them, for they know what they do." Taking the book of Luke and flipping it on its head. This is Schick.
And Jenny, we can get those visual aids to show, to help provide that context.
You know,
Absolutely.
you might think about putting, having an old binder with you. You know, that has this picture of the Declaration of Independence, freedom, America. Because you have lots of visitors who are not Jewish, right? Here's a man who loved America. Here's the Declaration of Independence. Then you can flip to the one of the Israel Declaration. By the way, that Declaration of Independence is in the gift shop there if you want to see the picture of it. I'm not saying go buy it. It's there. Or the Proclamation of Independence of the State of Israel. That's there too. So you can see the picture. They're there. They're not in the exhibition.
So we have to wrap up because it's after 7:30. I feel like Irv could go on for like another 2 hours, or we could ask questions for another 2 hours. But seeing that everyone wants to go home and have dinner and see their families, or maybe I'm just speaking for myself. I'd like to go home and have dinner.
Babysitters.
Yes, or Rebecca's going to enjoy her night off.